Busy today?
I know that I have been drinking. I can feel it, and I'm aware that I feel it, but I don't feel drunk. I feel that I can walk a straight line, and I can speak all right, and I'll be able to drive, but I'll take it a little slower. It beats walking.
How many drinks have you had tonight?
Between 10 and 11 drinks. 10, 12, somewhere around there. You can see now my speech is slurring now.
But you're still going to drive.
Right.
How come?
How come?
My 16-year-old daughter was killed this past April by a drunk driver. She was walking along on Holbrook Road with some of her friends at about 8 o'clock on a Friday night, coming home from a store, and this drunk driver just ran her down.
Hello, I'm Fred Noriega. After you've spent an hour or two in a local pub and leave after maybe having one drink too many, get in your car and try to drive home, realize that you may kill someone before you get there. Drunk drivers are responsible for some 26,000 fatalities every year. That's approximately one victim every 26 minutes, numbers which really cannot measure the misery they represent.
I'm Marie Torre. Drunk driving is one of those social problems for which there is more talk than action. Too bad, because while the debate continues, people are dying at the hands of drunk drivers. 250,000 of them over the past decade. Later in this program, on-the-record comments from people in the forefront of this perplexing issue. Fred?
On this edition of Channel 2 The People, we will examine a problem that some people have called an American tragedy, driving while intoxicated.
Everybody's done a lot of drinking and driving. I guess, like I say, I didn't realize I was so drunk that I couldn't drive at the time.
I'm loaded. For partying after a night out, I know I'm going to be able to make it home, and nobody's going to be able to take the wheel away from me.
I know I'm not seriously drunk. I know I'm still capable of driving.
Is there anything that would stop you from drinking and driving?
A tragic accident. I really believe that. Something that would hit home, something tragic.
My 16-year-old daughter was killed this past April by a drunk driver. She was walking along on Holbrook Road with some of her friends at about 8 o'clock on a Friday night, coming home from a store, and this drunk driver just ran her down.
My wife was killed December 19th. She was coming home at 8 o'clock at night. I'm sorry. And this individual crossed over the divider and hit her head on and killed her.
1 dead, 2 injured. 1 dead, 3 injured. 4 dead, 10 injured. All victims of crashes caused by those driving while intoxicated. DWI. Nationwide, half of all auto fatalities are alcohol-related. Last year, drunk drivers killed 26,000 Americans and seriously injured another 1 million. On weekdays, 5% of all drivers on the road are drunk, 10% on weekend nights. While 9 out of 10 drivers have not been drinking, the number of drinking drivers adds up, and the harm they inflict is immeasurable.
I liken it to putting on a blindfold and loading a 6-shooter, and then just start pulling the trigger whichever direction you feel like it. It's the same thing. Once a drunk gets behind the wheel of an automobile, it shows that his weapon weighs about 4,000 pounds.
Long Island TV journalist Paul Ciccarelli chased down hundreds of drinking-related accidents in the course of making a documentary about drunk driving.
Drunk drivers basically are our neighbors, people we know, people we may socialize with. Drunk driver is a leader in affirmative action. They don't care what color you are, they don't care what religion you are, they don't care how rich or how poor you are, they don't care about your wife, your kids, or your brothers or your sisters, or nobody. And there are drunk drivers in every echelon of society.
In an effort to understand the rationale of those who choose to drive while intoxicated, I spoke to a number of drivers outside a Queens bar one Friday night.
How many drinks have you had tonight?
4.
And you're going to keep on driving?
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel it's dangerous?
No, not at all.
Do you drink and drive often?
Do I drink? Not very often, but if I'm drinking and I have to drive to get home, then I'll do it.
You only live once, I say. And why not make the best of what you live? And if you're cautious about it, I think everything works out good.
Are you driving tonight?
I will be a little later on this evening, not right now, though.
Do you think that's dangerous?
It's not the first time I've done this, but I think I'll be all right.
25-year-old Harvey Robbins told me he had had 6 drinks since the evening began.
Don't you get nervous that you might hurt yourself or hurt somebody else?
It's been in my mind, whether in front or in the back of my mind. I have kept it in my mind, though, that I have been a little drunk, or so to speak, quote-unquote, drunk. But I was a little bit worried, honestly. I do live about 3 minutes from here. I've taken that in consideration a few times.
How often do you really go straight home after you leave the bar?
50-50. Sometimes I go out, half the time I don't.
And sometimes you leave the bar drunk, go someplace else, and have another drink.
Right on.
True. That's true. I won't argue with you on that point at all.
Harvey agreed to take a breathalyzer test. A breathalyzer is an instrument designed to measure the blood alcohol content in one's body. In New York State, one is considered officially drunk and therefore a dangerous driver if there is at least 0.10% alcohol in the bloodstream, indicated on this breathalyzer by a shining red light.
Not too fast. Okay, nice and easy, nice and easy. Okay. Can you see the red dial?
Yeah.
That means you're officially drunk. You gonna get in your car tonight?
As of now, I probably still will, because of my own judgment and the way I feel.
A person under the influence of alcohol is the poorest judge of how they are functioning and how they are feeling, because the drug alcohol produces this kind of euphoria, this kind of sedation, this kind of calm indifference to one's own true state and what's happening around one.
Psychiatrist Sheldon Zimberg is a foremost expert in the field of alcoholism research.
When a person consumes enough alcohol so that his blood alcohol level is at 0.10 milligrams percent, research has shown there is a dramatic increase in the probability of having an accident. It's regardless of the person's history with alcohol. It's simply just a physiological, pharmacological fact that if you consume enough alcohol rapidly enough, your judgment is impaired and your ability to use your muscles and your ability to operate in an effective way is impaired.
Some people are enraged, mad in this case, by the drinking-related accidents on roadways and the lenient treatment often afforded the offending drivers. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, is a nationwide organization comprised of grieving, embittered mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, and other concerned citizens, like journalist Paul Ciccarelli.
I'm concerned about people not driving in an intoxicated fashion and risking other people's right to drive safely on the highways.
I've been in physical therapy for 2 years. It's just since July that I'm standing upright. I was hit by a drunk driver, and I was left in my car, demolished, and he ran away. And they caught him. He was convicted of drunk driving, was given a $50 fine and a 90-day suspended license. He had just gotten his license back 13 days before he hit me. I'm mad.
This has to stop. This woman who killed my nephew, she got 30 days in jail, $500 fine, and 3 years probation.
He killed my wife, and he could have gotten 5 to 15 years, and the most he got was 3 1/3 to 10. And this guy was a bum, that's all he was. He had a previous conviction, was convicted 3 times at DWI.
It has been a year since 54-year-old Bob Lamberson lost his wife Helen to a drunk driver.
I used to drive in the driveway, and she'd be looking out the back window. When I came in, she'd be there. That's the worst part right there. You can always leave the house during the day, you're busy getting ready for work and going to work, but when you come home, that's when it's hard. It's very, very lonely, is what it is. It's a terrible way to die, that's all, because of some guy that can't control himself and doesn't have enough common sense if he's going to drink not to drive. He just, he destroyed the whole family. That's what he did. She'll never see her kids, and her grandchildren will never see her. You're a survivor now is all you are. You're a victim and a survivor.
Everybody's done a lot of drinking and driving. I guess, like I say, I didn't realize I was so drunk that I couldn't drive at the time. I thought I was very much under control.
Fortunately for someone, he did not collide into another car. But this man, who I will call Lou, almost killed himself driving while intoxicated when he went off the road and hit a telephone pole.
I was hospitalized. I had broken collarbone, broken shoulder, broken scapula, broken ribs, concussion, got 70 stitches, and 75% of my back and my entire left arm was burnt. And it bothers me to see somebody, hey, listen, I can drive, Of course it happened to you, doesn't mean it's going to happen to me. It was a freak accident. It wasn't a freak accident. It was something that happens every day.
You saw the red light on the breathalyzer, and it said you're drunk.
Right.
You told me that you are pretty far gone.
You can hear that in my speech.
But still, the two of you will get in your car and risk your lives.
It's not that serious, man. I've been brought up in New York. It's not all that serious.
Okay. Listen, get home safely.
We'll do that.
We will.
This report on drunk driving will continue with Marie Torre in just a moment.
I'm not afraid of being caught because the laws in New York are lenient.
Somebody gets caught drunk and driving, they might have their license suspended, and 2-3 weeks later, they might pay a fine or something, and they're back on the road.
If the law was quite strict, and if there was something announced or a law passed that would say that I would be locked up, or not locked up for a short period of time, meaning some sort of harsh punishment, I would probably be a bit more leery of what I was doing. And I probably would absolutely not drive.
If people who drink and drive say the laws are easy on them, why can't the people who would not drink and drive, manage to get tougher laws passed? Couched in that question is an American outrage, called ironically a victimless crime, although drunk driving claims about 26,000 lives a year, not to mention the pain and suffering inflicted on the kin of those killed.
I hope no one has to go through what we've been through.
Sue and Vincent Heisman of Oyster Bay had a 17-year-old son who was a drunk driving fatality.
Through all the holidays, my daughter's wedding, there's always something missing. And it's a tragic, terrible catastrophe to your family to have it happen.
What's the worst that could happen to a person for killing an individual because of drunk driving? The question is asked of Nassau County lawyer Mary Beth Abbott, who has defended drunk driving offenders.
The worst that probably would happen is that he would be convicted of manslaughter in the second degree, and he could be sentenced to 15 years in jail.
How often does that happen?
Very rarely. I've never heard of a 15-year sentence on a crime like that.
In the case of the Heisman boy, a criminal negligent homicide, the 19-year-old drunk driver could have been incarcerated up to 4 years. Instead, the judge sentenced him to weekends in jail for 1 year.
The complete outrage of the final end at court was that the drunk driving charge was dropped completely. Yes, so this young man does not have a drunk driving charge on his license.
On what basis could that have been dropped?
The plea bargaining.
The plea bargaining.
Judges pretty much impose fines in terms of drunk driving cases. They have a defendant who comes before them who's a responsible member of the community, quote, someone who has a job, again, has a family. They feel it's not generally done, or it's not particularly necessary to send them to jail. They fine them. I don't think that's sufficient.
Are judges lenient? Judge Joseph Goldstein of District Court in Nassau County says leniency is not a factor in his court.
Each person really must have individual judgment based upon his particular background and the offense which he committed or she committed.
And it's not a matter of leniency, you say then?
No. Is where a person has pled guilty or is found guilty after trial to driving while intoxicated, he or she will spend some time in the custody of the Nassau County Correction Center. Now, I don't think that's lenient. I will, once he comes out, place him on 3 years probation. If he violates that probation, he will then go back to jail, and he'll go back for a substantial period of time.
In New York, a first drunk driving conviction carries a minimum fine of $350, plus a 1-year maximum jail term and a 6-month loss of license. But violators often escape serious punishment because of plea bargaining. Pleading guilty, that is, to a lesser charge in exchange for having more serious charges dropped. What should be done about it? Professor James Malfetti of Columbia's Teachers College, who has worked in the field for 25 years.
The punishment has to be sure and swift. It also should be light rather than severe. The more harsh you make the penalty, the more plea bargaining goes on, the more people demand a jury trial, the more people who hire attorneys, the bigger the backlog in the court. And so, sure, swift, and light.
Might the statistics on alcohol-related accidents remain high because the drunk driver is sometimes hard to distinguish from the social drinker, and vice versa? Harvey Robbins considers himself a social drinker. 4 nights before I met with Robbins, he failed a breathalyzer test administered by Fred. After you talked to Fred Noriega the other night, did you make it home all right?
Oh, absolutely. I believe the alcohol had impaired my judgment somewhat, made me a bit more fragile, so to speak, but I got home quite safely. I usually know my limits quite well.
Would you say you had 3 drinks?
I had, I believe, 3 or 4, yeah, that's correct.
Robbins, under the influence of alcohol, gave Fred a different answer to that question 4 nights before at the bar. Here's a replay.
Harvey, how many drinks have you had tonight?
As of now, I've had 6.
While impairment due to alcohol varies from person to person, experts say that driving skills are significantly diminished at a blood alcohol level of 0.10. To score 0.10 on the breathalyzer and make the red light come on, a 160-pound man would have to consume 5.5 beers on an empty stomach in 90 minutes, or a bottle of wine in 2 hours. If you had been stopped by a police officer on your way home after you talked to Fred, you might have been arrested. Do you feel that this is wrong, that this is an infringement of your rights?
Probably yes, because of the law. I don't think I would have been arrested. I would have put up some sort of argument, but I really knew what I was doing. I really felt quite capable of being able to drive home myself that evening.
All the rest of us have rights, too. Not to be hit by him if he was coming down the road and he was drunk. Our 17-year-old son was coming home from a movie one night. He had stopped to get a hamburger and a Coke. And a young 19-year-old boy, I don't know if he was in a bar or where but he had been drinking, and he smashed into my son's car, killed him instantly. So perhaps he felt at one time that he could drink and drive also.
Drunk driving is the nation's #1 killer of young persons up to 25 years of age. How is the carnage to be stopped or at least diminished?
Personally, I believe in mandatory jail sentences for people who are arrested and convicted. I think that what's happened is society has formed an impression that driving while intoxicated is not so bad.
Ms. Abbott, it should be noted, recently experienced the death of a young brother-in-law in an alcohol-related accident, and she's pursuing the case in her late relative's behalf.
If you have a person who's arrested and convicted of driving while intoxicated, and he has to go in and say to his boss, listen, I have to take my vacation because I have to go to jail, he's going to think twice about it. If he has to say to his family, I can't be with you on Christmas because I have to spend the week in jail, he's going to think twice about it.
Somebody who goes to a party and knows that he's going to drink has an obligation beforehand either to carry with him a taxi cab phone number or have a friend who's going to drive home and who does not drink.
Through their efforts as members of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, the Heismans devote time to educating the public on the hazards.
Some of our work is educational, getting out to the community and telling them what they can do to avoid being in an alcoholic accident.
We should start at the kindergarten grades to acquaint students in very basic ways with what can be done in their own lives as they mature and reach the drinking situations they will face later on, which will reduce that problem.
Most fatal accidents, says Professor Malfetti, are first accidents, which means that
if rehabilitation and re-education programs were 100% successful, 85 to 95% of the problem would still be with us the succeeding year through new offenses, new people committing the offense. Well, the recidivists, while they get a great deal of the publicity, that is the people who offend more than once, the multiple offenders, they constitute a very small fraction of the problem.
there is a postscript to this segment from a woman who used to drink and drive.
My children told me that when I stopped drinking, later on they told me that they always feared that something would happen, and they were very young at the time. They were 5, 7, 8 years old at the time. And when I stopped drinking, they would tell me these stories. But while I was drinking and driving, they were afraid to say anything to me. They would just sit in the back of the car holding, you know, the back part of the seat and hope that nothing would happen.
Drink and drive. Most of us have done it, and many will continue to do so because it's socially acceptable. And perhaps that's the problem. We haven't felt the need nor had the courage to accept the personal responsibility to do something about this tragedy. Unfortunately, this problem won't go away. Think about it this way. While you've been watching this program, someone in this country was killed at the hands of a drunk driver.
It is wrong to assume that drunk driving is something for the authorities alone to tackle. It's everybody's problem. Think about it next time you entertain. If you do not attempt to dissuade a tipsy guest from driving home or help him make other arrangements, you are contributing to the problem. Fred?
For Marie Torre, I'm Fred Noriega. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week with another edition of Channel to the People.